Danhausen didn't just appear on SmackDown, he invaded it with chaos. And somehow, in the span of a few minutes, The Miz, the self-proclaimed A-lister of WWE, went from confident superstar to a man being cursed on live television. Yes, literally cursed. The question is, did Danhausen just embarrass The Miz, or did he start a feud that could completely derail Miz's ego on SmackDown? And before we get into it, quick question for the Ring Rumble family. If you had the power to curse one WWE superstar for a week, who would it be, and what would the curse do? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious what creative chaos you'd come up with. Now, let's rewind to the moment that set the WWE Universe on fire. Because what happened on March 6, 2026 SmackDown wasn't just weird. It was very nice, very evil. The arena lights dimmed slightly as The Miz stood in the ring, microphone in hand, wearing that smug smile that every WWE fan has grown to either love or absolutely hate. And Miz was doing what Miz does best. Talking. Boasting about his accomplishments. Bragging about his Hollywood success. Reminding everyone that while other superstars fight for attention, he is the attention. And honestly, at first, the crowd reaction was exactly what you'd expect. Boos. Loud ones. But Miz didn't care. He never does. He paced back and forth in the ring, soaking it all in like a villain who feeds off the hatred of the crowd. And then he dropped the line that really ignited the moment. Miz said that there wasn't a single superstar backstage with the charisma, intelligence, or star power to interrupt him. Bad idea. Because seconds later, the arena speakers crackled. And the screen flashed something the WWE Universe never expected to see on SmackDown. Danhausen. Now, quick trivia question for you watching. Did you expect Danhausen to appear on SmackDown this year? Comment yes or a no right now. I want to see who predicted this chaos. For anyone unfamiliar with Danhausen's bizarre aura, let me paint the picture. Face paint. A sinister grin. A character that mixes horror, comedy, and pure wrestling weirdness. And somehow, it works. The moment his theme echoed through the arena, the crowd erupted with a mix of confusion and excitement. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, expected Danhausen to confront The Miz. But he wasn't just walking to the ring. No. Danhausen strutted down the ramp like he had already planned something very evil. The Miz leaned against the ropes, watching him approach with the same expression someone might have when a raccoon walks into their living room. Confused. Annoyed. Slightly threatened. When Danhausen finally stepped into the ring, he stared directly at Miz. No words. Just silence. And the tension was oddly hilarious. Then Miz finally broke it. He looked Danhausen up and down and said something that instantly made the crowd louder. Who let the Halloween decoration into my ring? Classic Miz insult. But the crowd booed immediately. Now, here's another quick question for you guys. Who's better on the mic, The Miz or Danhausen? Type Miz or Danhausen in the comments. I already know that debate is about to get heated. Danhausen slowly raised the microphone. Paused. Looked at Miz again. And then delivered the line that completely flipped the energy in the arena. Danhausen does not appreciate the insults. The crowd popped. Miz rolled his eyes. But Danhausen wasn't done. He continued. You see, Miz, you are rich, famous, and very annoying. Huge laughter from the crowd. Even the commentary team struggled to keep it together. But then Danhausen leaned closer to Miz, lowered his voice, and said something that changed the entire tone of the segment. You will be cursed. The arena exploded. Miz burst out laughing. Because of course he did. To him, this was ridiculous. A grown man in face paint claiming to curse people on national television? Miz thought this was beneath him. And he said exactly that. He told Danhausen that SmackDown is for superstars, not internet memes with makeup. Ouch. But Danhausen didn't react the way most wrestlers would. He didn't attack. He didn't yell. Instead, he slowly raised both hands, pointed them toward The Miz, and whispered, Danhausen curses you. And right then, something weird happened. The arena lights flickered. Just for a moment. But it was enough. The crowd gasped. And Miz stopped laughing. Now, obviously, this could have been coincidence. But wrestling thrives on moments like this. Because suddenly, the entire audience leaned forward wondering, did the curse actually work? Miz tried to brush it off. He told the production team to fix the lights. He mocked Danhausen again. But you could see it in his face. For just a split second, he wasn't comfortable anymore. And the crowd noticed. Another trivia question for you. Do you think Danhausen's curse will become an ongoing storyline? Type curse storyline or one-time segment in the comments. I'm really curious where fans think this is going. But the real magic of the segment hadn't even happened yet. Because Miz decided he was done entertaining this. He told Danhausen to leave the ring before security escorted him out. Danhausen tilted his head, smiled, and calmly responded, "Too late." And right as he said that, Miz tried to speak again. But his microphone suddenly cut out. No sound. Dead silence. The crowd immediately erupted. Miz tapped the mic. Nothing. Danhausen slowly lifted his own microphone and said, "Ah, the curse begins." The arena lost its mind, and you could see Miz getting visibly frustrated. He grabbed another microphone from the ringside crew, started talking again, and guess what happened? That mic cut out too. Now, at this point the audience was absolutely eating this up. Because whether it was production genius or coincidence, it was perfect storytelling. The Miz, one of WWE's greatest talkers, was suddenly unable to speak. And Danhausen stood there like a smug magician who had just pulled off the ultimate trick. But here's where things got even better. Miz finally snapped. He threw the microphone down and charged at Danhausen. The crowd jumped to their feet, because it looked like we were about to see a fight. But Danhausen dodged, quickly slid out of the ring, and stood on the floor laughing. Miz leaned over the ropes yelling at him, without a microphone this time. Danhausen simply pointed at him again, and repeated the words that would become the quote of the night. "Very nice, very cursed." Then he walked up the ramp while the crowd chanted, "Curse, curse, curse." Meanwhile, Miz stood in the ring absolutely furious. And honestly, that visual might have been the most entertaining part of the entire segment. The Miz, a man who thrives on control and attention, completely losing his composure because of a supposed supernatural curse. Now, let's pause for another quick ring rumble debate. Was this one of the funniest SmackDown segments of the year so far? Comment funniest or MID. No fence sitting. I want honest opinions. But the story didn't end when Danhausen walked away. Oh no. Because throughout the rest of SmackDown, the curse kept haunting The Miz. Later in the night, Miz was interviewed backstage. He tried to explain that the whole thing was a production error. But mid-sentence, a lighting rig behind him suddenly flickered again. The interviewer jumped. Miz froze. And fans watching instantly remembered Danhausen's warning. Coincidence? Maybe. But wrestling storytelling doesn't rely on coincidence. It relies on suspense. And WWE leaned into it perfectly. It makes Danhausen's antics even funnier. And if you're a longtime wrestling fan, you know WWE has a long history with supernatural gimmicks. From eerie mind games to strange psychological warfare. Danhausen's curse taps into that tradition, but with a modern comedic twist. It's spooky, but also ridiculous. And that balance is exactly why fans are talking about this segment nonstop. But let me ask you something serious for a second. What if the curse actually leads to Miz losing multiple matches? Imagine the meltdown. Imagine Miz blaming Danhausen for every mistake. Imagine him becoming paranoid, checking the ropes, checking the lights, refusing to speak into microphones. That kind of slow descent into madness could turn the storyline into something legendary. And knowing WWE storytelling, they might stretch this for weeks, maybe even months. Because every episode could introduce a new curse incident. And every time Miz thinks he's escaped it, something else goes wrong. That's the beauty of this concept. It's endlessly creative. But eventually, there will have to be a confrontation. And when that moment comes, the crowd will be electric. Because fans will want to know one thing. Can Danhausen actually back up his curse in the ring? Or will The Miz prove that the A-lister is immune to supernatural nonsense? That's the question hanging over this entire feud. Before we wrap up, I've got one last challenge for you guys watching. Create your own Danhausen curse for The Miz. Maybe his sunglasses disappear. Maybe his entrance music turns into circus music. Maybe every time he brags, the lights shut off. Drop your funniest curse ideas in the comments. I'll be reading them, and the best ones might get featured in the next Ring Rumble video. One thing is certain after SmackDown on March 6, 2026. Nobody expected Danhausen to walk in, curse The Miz, break his microphones, and leave the A-lister screaming in frustration. But that's exactly what happened. And if this feud continues the way it started, we might be witnessing the birth of one of the most bizarre rivalries in recent SmackDown history. Very nice, very evil, and possibly very bad news for The Miz.